Welcome to the Deeper Thinking podcast. Today's episode dismantles our deepest assumptions about ambition, fulfillment, and the meaning we attach to work. We explore not just the pressures of high performance, but the very nature of success itself, where it comes from, why it feels so elusive, and whether it is even real. What happens when we step off the treadmill of external validation? Can we unlearn the idea that our worth is measured by what we produce? And if we do, what comes next? Drawing from philosophy, psychology, and cultural criticism, this conversation challenges everything we have been taught about the purpose of striving. To explore more about the concepts and thinkers discussed, including Jean-Paul Sartre on radical freedom, Christopher Lasch on the culture of narcissism, and Karl Marx on alienation, please go to the description where you'll find a link to the episode webpage, which includes additional reading, resources, and recommendations. A man stands in a crowded subway station, his violin case open on the floor. He plays Bach, his fingers moving effortlessly across the strings. Thousands of people pass by, barely noticing. Some glance, a few toss coins. Most don't even slow their steps. He is invisible. 2 nights ago, this man played a sold-out concert where seats cost over $1,000. The only difference? Context. The world had decided where he mattered. We are conditioned to believe that excellence will be recognized, that talent will always rise, that hard work guarantees success. But reality tells a different story. Value is not inherent, it is assigned. A world-class violinist playing in a subway is ignored, not because he lacks skill, but because the setting does not confer status upon him. This is the first great lie of success. It is not about how good you are, but about whether the world has decided you are worthy of attention. This belief that high performance leads to fulfillment has shaped our lives in ways we rarely question. From childhood, we are trained to strive. Schools rank us, workplaces reward overwork, social media showcases only the extraordinary. We learn to measure our worth by our productivity, to see idleness as failure, to treat ambition as a moral good. We are told that if we push hard enough, if we sacrifice enough, we will be rewarded. That success is not just possible, but inevitable for those who deserve it, and so we strive. But something is wrong. Despite reaching levels of achievement that previous generations could not have imagined, we are more anxious, more exhausted, more lost. Burnout has become an epidemic. The wealthiest countries in the world report rising rates of depression. The people we are told to admire, CEOs, elite athletes, cultural icons, speak openly about feeling empty, about their inability to enjoy the very things they spent their lives chasing. They stand at the peak of the mountain only to find that there is no summit, just another incline. This is the paradox of modern ambition. The more we chase success, the further fulfillment seems to slip away. The problem is not that we have failed to reach the right version of success. It is that success itself is a mirage. Every milestone simply raises the bar for the next one. A degree is no longer enough. It must be from a prestigious institution. A job is no longer enough. It must be meaningful, lucrative, and impressive. Even happiness has become a performance, something to be curated, documented, and validated by others. But what if fulfillment does not come from relentless striving? What if the problem is not that we haven't worked hard enough, but that we have been aiming at the wrong target? The truth is, we do not need better strategies for success. We need an entirely different framework for what it means to live well. It is time to step back, to question everything we have been told about ambition, achievement, and the purpose of our efforts. Because if success is a lie, then the real question is, what have we been running from all along? Envy is an emotion we are taught to fear. It is framed as a sign of weakness, an indicator of small-mindedness, a corrosive force that poisons relationships and breeds resentment. When it arises, we suppress it, ashamed to admit that we want what someone else has. We tell ourselves to be grateful, to stop comparing, to focus on our own path. But what if envy is not the problem? What if, instead of something to be eradicated, it is something to be examined? Envy is rarely random. It does not flare up in response to just anyone's success. It is highly specific. A friend launches a creative project and you feel a pang of something sharp and uncomfortable. A colleague moves abroad, and you cannot shake the feeling that you should be doing something different with your life. Someone achieves a milestone you hadn't even realized you wanted until you saw it in front of you. These moments are not coincidences. They are revelations. Nietzsche called this ressentiment, the tendency to suppress our desires by dismissing them as unworthy. Instead of acknowledging what we want, we convince ourselves that we never wanted it in the first place. We mock those who pursue what we secretly crave. We tell ourselves that their success is superficial, that they are lucky, that they are selling out. But beneath that cynicism is something far more difficult to face. The realization that we too might have wanted that life, if only we had allowed ourselves to admit it. Freud argued that unacknowledged emotions do not disappear, they manifest in other ways. Envy, when ignored, turns inward, disguising itself as self-doubt, anxiety, or quiet resentment. We push down our ambitions only to feel restless and unfulfilled. We tell ourselves that we are content, that we have chosen the right path, yet we feel inexplicably dissatisfied. This is the cost of self-deception. When we refuse to listen to what envy is telling us, we do not free ourselves from it. We become ruled by it in ways we do not even recognize. But what if, instead of suppressing envy, we interrogated it? What if, the next time we felt that familiar pang, we stopped and asked, what exactly am I envious of? Is it the freedom someone has created for themselves, their courage to pursue something uncertain, their willingness to take risks you have avoided? Envy is never just about status or wealth. It is about something deeper, something that speaks to an unfulfilled part of ourselves. When we learn to listen to envy rather than run from it, it ceases to be a source of bitterness and becomes a tool for self-discovery. It reveals the gap between the life we are living and the life we secretly desire. Instead of resenting those who have what we want, we can use them as guides, as evidence that what we long for is possible. The goal is not to be free of envy, it is to allow it to lead us somewhere new. Western culture treats negative emotions as obstacles to be eliminated. From childhood, we are taught that happiness is the goal, that sadness and anger are problems, that emotional discomfort is a sign of failure. Stay positive, we are told. Let it go. Self-help books, corporate wellness programs, and social media influencers all promote the idea that a fulfilling life is one free of negativity. But this obsession with positivity has a cost. It creates a world in which people do not process their emotions, they perform over them. The pressure to suppress difficult emotions is woven into every aspect of modern life. At work, employees are expected to maintain professionalism, no matter how exhausted or disillusioned they feel. In relationships, people avoid hard conversations to keep the peace. On social media, we curate our lives to appear effortless, filtering out anything that does not fit the narrative of success and joy. The result is a culture in which people learn to mask their struggles, to smile through their unhappiness, to construct a version of themselves that is palatable to others. Donald Winnicott, the British psychoanalyst, called this the false self, the version of ourselves we create to meet external expectations. Many people spend their entire lives performing this role, disconnecting from their real emotions in the process. Over time, they lose the ability to recognize their own needs. They are not unhappy, exactly. They are numb. They function, they achieve, they maintain the appearance of a well-adjusted life, but something is missing. The problem is not that they feel too much. It is that they have spent so long trying not to feel at all. Carl Jung called this the shadow self, the parts of our psyche that we reject because they do not align with how we wish to be seen. But what we repress does not disappear, it controls us from the background. Unacknowledged anger becomes passive aggression. Suppressed sadness turns into exhaustion. Avoided anxiety manifests as overwork, perfectionism, or the inability to slow down. The more we push emotions away, the more they shape our lives in unseen ways. Psychological research supports this. Studies show that people who suppress their emotions experience higher levels of stress, weakened immune function, and long-term mental health struggles. Avoiding discomfort does not protect us. It makes us more vulnerable to it. The healthiest people are not those who are always happy, but those who allow themselves to feel fully. They do not see sadness or fear as failures, but as signals, indicators that something in their lives needs attention. If we want to live well, we must stop treating emotions as problems to be solved. Instead of asking, how can I stop feeling this way, we should ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Anger may reveal an unmet need. Anxiety may signal misalignment. Sadness may be a call for change. Emotions are not obstacles to happiness. They are guides. The goal is not to eliminate them. It is to listen. Modern life is built on the assumption that being ordinary is a failure. From the time we are children, we are told that we must stand out, that we must be exceptional, that an average life is not worth aspiring to. Schools reward the brightest students, companies promote the most ambitious employees, social media glorifies the most curated, extraordinary experiences. The message is clear: if you are not exceptional, you are invisible. If you do not achieve something remarkable, you do not matter. But this obsession with being special has consequences, ones that we rarely stop to question. The fear of being ordinary is not just external pressure. It becomes an internalized anxiety, shaping how we view ourselves and our worth. We measure our lives against impossible standards, feeling restless when our achievements seem small, when our progress feels slow, when our lives feel too routine. This fear drives people to overwork, to seek constant validation, to compare themselves endlessly. But the irony is that the more we strive to prove our significance, the more disconnected we become from the things that actually make life meaningful. Hannah Arendt observed that modern societies, despite their claims of valuing equality, remain deeply hierarchical in their perception of human worth. We celebrate the extraordinary and in doing so, diminish the value of the ordinary. But this is a dangerous illusion. Most of life, by definition, is made up of ordinary moments. The vast majority of human existence consists of simple, quiet experiences. Eating meals, having conversations, walking through familiar streets. Even those we idolize, scientists, artists, visionaries, spend most of their days engaged in unremarkable routines. Yet, we have been conditioned to believe that unless life is grand and spectacular, it is somehow lacking. Bertrand Russell warned against what he called the useless worry over one's personal significance. He argued that people suffer not because their lives are unfulfilling, but because they have been taught that their lives should be something more. Instead of appreciating the depth of ordinary existence, they feel constantly inadequate, always chasing a version of themselves that will never arrive. But Russell believed that true happiness comes not from exceptional achievements, but from the ability to embrace the present. The satisfaction of a well-cooked meal, the pleasure of a good book, the warmth of friendship. These are not distractions from a meaningful life. They are a meaningful life. The obsession with being special has blinded us to the richness of the ordinary. A morning spent drinking coffee in silence, an evening laughing with a friend, a simple act of kindness. These are not lesser moments. They are life itself. The problem is not that our lives are too ordinary. It is that we have been conditioned to believe that ordinary is not enough. But what if it is? What if the most radical act in a culture obsessed with greatness is simply to embrace the beauty of the everyday? What if, instead of trying to be remarkable, we allowed ourselves to be content? Visibility has become a form of currency. It is no longer enough to be skilled, intelligent, or even successful. One must be seen. The pursuit of fame, once reserved for actors, politicians, and artists, has now become a universal aspiration. Social media has transformed everyone into a potential celebrity, where self-worth is measured in followers, engagement, and public recognition. We have been conditioned to believe that to matter, we must be visible, and if we are not seen, we fear that we do not exist. This shift has reshaped the way we experience life. Increasingly, people do not simply live their lives, they perform them. A beautiful sunset is no longer just something to be enjoyed. It must be captured, edited, and shared. A relationship is not just a private connection, but something to be publicly curated. Achievements, once a source of internal pride, now feel incomplete unless they are acknowledged by an audience. In this way, the self is no longer something we cultivate. It is something we stage. Christopher Lasch, in The Culture of Narcissism, warned that modern society was producing individuals who were not necessarily more self-absorbed, but more dependent on external validation. Social media has only amplified this phenomenon. Experiences are increasingly judged not by how they feel, but by how they look. The more we seek recognition, the more anxious we become about maintaining it. Visibility is fleeting, and the effort to remain relevant never ends. Attention is addictive, and like any addiction, it requires increasing doses to sustain the same effect. Erich Fromm described this as a form of existential insecurity, the fear that without external validation, we are nothing. Fame, whether on a global scale or within a small social circle, becomes a way to escape this fear. But it is a trap. The more visible a person becomes, the more they are shaped by the expectations of others. Celebrities, despite their public adoration, frequently speak of isolation, the pressure of constant scrutiny, and the loss of a private self. They become prisoners of their own image, performing a version of themselves that is no longer entirely theirs. For those who do not achieve fame, the impact is different, but equally damaging. The feeling that one's life is insignificant unless widely acknowledged creates a quiet despair. It fosters the belief that moments are only valuable if they are witnessed. A private victory, a quiet joy, an experience known only to oneself, these are increasingly seen as insufficient. The unspoken message is clear. If people are not watching, does it even count? But what if we rejected this idea? What if we allowed ourselves to live without an audience? The moments that define us, the ones that truly shape who we are, rarely happen in the public eye. They happen in solitude, in stillness, in deep conversations, in the spaces between performances. To step away from the need to be seen is to reclaim something profound, the right to experience life on our own terms, unfiltered and unmeasured. True presence is not found in visibility. It is found in the ability to live fully, whether or not anyone is watching. Work has become the defining feature of modern identity. From childhood, we are asked what we want to be when we grow up, as though our entire existence can be reduced to a job title. We are taught meaning, purpose, and self-worth are tied to productivity. The first question we ask a stranger is, "What do you do?" The expectation is clear. A person's value is measured by their output. But what if this assumption is deeply flawed? What if work is not the foundation of meaning, but one of the greatest obstacles to it? Karl Marx warned of alienation, the condition in which workers feel disconnected from the products of their labor, from their own creativity, and ultimately from themselves. He argued that in a capitalist society, most people do not work to fulfill their passions, but to survive. Yet, to prevent widespread dissatisfaction, the system has transformed work into a moral virtue. Productivity is not just an economic necessity, it has become a personal obligation. The ideal worker is not just someone who produces, but someone who wants to produce. Exhaustion is mistaken for dedication, self-sacrifice for ambition. We are not just expected to work, we are expected to love working. This mindset is so deeply ingrained that even those who seek work-life balance often frame it in terms of productivity. Rest is not seen as an end in itself, but as a tool to improve performance. Meditation is recommended not for inner peace, but for efficiency. Even leisure is increasingly structured around optimization. Hobbies must be monetized, relaxation must be justified. The idea that time spent not working might be inherently valuable is treated as radical, even irresponsible. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, argued that true meaning does not come from work itself, but from the ability to experience life fully through love, relationships, curiosity, and creativity. He did not dismiss work altogether, but he cautioned against mistaking it for a purpose in itself. Yet modern society tells us the opposite, that a job should provide identity, meaning, and self-worth. When it fails to do so, as jobs inevitably do, we are left unfulfilled, not because something is wrong with us, but because something is wrong with the expectation itself. The pandemic forced a global reckoning with these ideas. For the first time in generations, people en masse began questioning whether work should dictate their entire lives. The Great Resignation was not just about burnout, it was about people realizing that their jobs had consumed them, that they had spent years sacrificing relationships, health, and passions for work that gave little in return. It was a moment of clarity. People were not working to live, they were living to work. To redefine work is to redefine life itself. What if we stopped asking children what they want to be and instead asked what makes them curious, what fills them with wonder, what brings them joy? What if our identities were shaped not by our resumes, but by our relationships, our experiences, our capacity for kindness? A meaningful life is not one devoted to labour, it is one in which work is merely a small part of a much greater whole. Freedom is a concept we claim to value, yet in practice it often terrifies us. We say we want to be in control of our own lives, but when faced with real choice, the kind that demands we take full responsibility for our existence, we hesitate. It is easier to follow a well-worn path, to measure success by external standards, to conform to a role that society has already approved. True freedom removes the guardrails. It forces us to answer the most unsettling question of all. If no one told me who to be, what would I choose? Jean-Paul Sartre called this radical freedom. He argued that human beings are condemned to be free, meaning that there is no fixed destiny, no predetermined purpose, no higher plan dictating our path. We alone must decide what gives our lives meaning. But instead of embracing this responsibility, many people fall into what Sartre called bad faith, the act of deceiving ourselves into thinking we have no choice. We convince ourselves that we must stay in unfulfilling jobs, that we must meet societal expectations, that we must pursue certain goals because they are the markers of a successful life. These illusions provide comfort. They allow us to believe that our dissatisfaction is not our fault, that we are simply doing what we have to do. But the truth is that we are far less bound than we believe. The structures that shape our lives, career paths, social roles, definitions of success, are not laws of nature. They are human inventions upheld by collective agreement. And if they are inventions, they can be reimagined. The people who break away from these scripts, who quit prestigious jobs to pursue passions, who reject societal norms in favour of unconventional lifestyles, who redefine what it means to live well, are not anomalies. They are simply those who have recognised that the rules were never real to begin with. Albert Camus explored this existential confrontation in The Myth of Sisyphus, describing life as fundamentally absurd. We search for meaning, but the universe offers none. Many people respond by clinging to external markers of success, filling their lives with ambition and distraction to avoid confronting the void. But Camus proposed another response: acceptance. Instead of resisting the absurd, we can embrace it. Sisyphus, condemned to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity, is not a tragic figure in Camus' view. He is a liberated one. The moment he stops searching for external meaning and finds joy in the act itself, he becomes free. This is the paradox of freedom. The moment we stop searching for validation, we become truly free to create our own meaning. But few people take that step because the unknown is frightening. It is easier to follow a script than to write our own. It is easier to believe that happiness lies in success than to define happiness for ourselves. Yet for those who dare to confront this uncertainty, there is something greater waiting, not the promise of an easy life, but the promise of an authentic one. To embrace freedom fully is not to escape fear, it is to walk into it, unafraid. Success is a mirage, a constantly shifting goalpost that recedes the moment we think we have arrived. We are told that it is the key to fulfillment, that if we work hard enough, push ourselves far enough, achieve enough, we will finally feel complete. But even those who reach the highest peaks of success often find themselves haunted by the same question: is this all there is? If ambition truly led to happiness, then why do so many high achievers feel restless, exhausted, or empty? The problem is not that we have failed to reach the right version of success. It is that success itself is an illusion. It is not a reward for effort, but a construct designed to keep us striving, to ensure that we never stop long enough to ask whether the race was worth running in the first place. At its core, success is not a personal measure, but a social contract. It does not exist in isolation. It only holds meaning when others recognize it. This is why it never feels like enough. A person can achieve everything they set out to do, earn the degrees, build the career, acquire the accolades, and still feel inadequate because success as defined by society is designed to be unattainable. The metrics shift. A stable job is no longer enough. It must be prestigious. Wealth is not enough. It must be exceptional. Even happiness is now treated as a competition, something to be optimized and displayed. The pursuit of success is endless, not because we lack discipline, but because the system depends on our dissatisfaction. The radical act is not to refine success, but to reject its terms entirely. This does not mean abandoning ambition or refusing to strive. It means rethinking what it means to live well. It means recognizing that fulfillment is not a destination but a state of being, one that is available to us now, not in some distant future after we have checked all the right boxes. It means understanding that the most meaningful aspects of life, love, curiosity, creativity, presence, are not things we must earn through achievement, but things that already exist, waiting for us to notice them. To do this, we must step off the treadmill. We must resist the instinct to compare, to seek validation, to measure our worth by external standards. We must ask, if I never achieved anything extraordinary again, would my life still be worth living? If I stopped trying to prove myself, who would I be? These questions are terrifying because they strip away the illusions that keep us moving forward, but they are also liberating because they force us to stop running and start living. Perhaps the real goal is not to be successful, but to be free. Free from the pressure to perform, free from the fear of irrelevance, free from the exhausting pursuit of an idea that was never ours to begin with. And freedom does not mean the absence of effort, it means the presence of choice. It means choosing to create rather than compete, to experience rather than accumulate, to be rather than to prove. The world does not need more high performers. It needs more people who are awake, who are aware, who are willing to live. Not for accomplishment, but for the sheer fleeting beauty of existence itself. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Deeper Thinking podcast, an audio essay read by me, Holly, your digital narrator. For further reading, resources and recommendations, visit the episode webpage linked in the description. Until next time.